To those of you who don't know me, I'm Vinny Montez, a third-generation Mexican-American born in Boulder, Colorado. I have been serving my community in law enforcement both as a volunteer and as a commissioned peace officer since I was 14 years old. I'm proud to be a commander in patrol for the Boulder County Sheriff's Office. I love my community that I serve, and I would never want to serve anywhere else. My mother and father had no real education. They cleaned houses, businesses, and other facilities to help raise a son who knew what it was like to earn an honest dollar and work hard for what you get in life. I was taught to care for others and give back to my community. I was taught how important it is to be inclusive, creative, and show love for everyone. I believe all people are equal, and there should be no discrimination based upon race, color, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, or gender. I've spent the last 22 years as a peace officer. I love where I work, but I believe that you must speak up and speak out if you believe injustice exists. For the first time in my life, I'm deeply hurt because I have concluded that many in America don't think much about law enforcement. It's either that or they don't understand what we do behind the scenes in the dark hours of the night. When citizens are at home, asleep, or off on holidays, law enforcement is protecting them, responding to calls for service. We are doing our best to protect people from the evil that exists in this world. I have waited for several days to write this message, but I'm still terribly disturbed by the hatred and criticism leveled indiscriminately upon the law enforcement profession in recent weeks. During my tenure with the Sheriff's Office, I've rarely seen any messaging in the media or elsewhere recognizing the good that is going on in law enforcement. There's no acknowledgement about the personal struggles that officers go through, only the sensationalizing of the events they're involved in. There is rarely an acknowledgement that a total of 1,627 law enforcement officers died in the line of duty in the past 10 years. An average of one death every 54 hours, 163 per year. Last year, in 2019, 135 law enforcement officers were killed. There's no acknowledgement that the average life expectancy of a police officer is less than that of the general population, or the sad fact that more officers die by suicide than are killed in the line of duty. Suicide is now the leading cause of death for police officers. Some of my friends, including one that I personally trained, have taken their own lives as a result of the work-related issues and stress. I want to ask those who don't know me, do you have any idea how hard it is for the men and women serving our communities to serve in this profession today? Do you have any idea what it's like to show up on a scene where a mother has cut down their 16-year-old child who has hanged himself in the garage? Do you know what it's like to say, "I'm sorry for your loss," and not be able to get the sound of the family member's agonizing screams out of your mind? Do you know what it's like to give CPR to a 17-year-old kid, to be covered in blood, to do everything you can to save his life, but then have him die anyway? Do you know what it's like to live with the guilt, wondering if there was anything else you could have done? Do you know what it's like to watch a young man lose their father in front of you, to almost witness a fight between that young man and the paramedics because nothing more could be done? Do you know what it's like to hold that young man and say you're sorry for his loss, only to feel like it was just words with no impact? Do you know what it's like to listen to a suspect tell you how he sexually violated a young child? Do you know what it's like to show up on an accident scene with multiple fatalities and others who are critically injured? Do you know what it's like to step over a body like a sack of potatoes because there is nothing you can do while maintaining your composure and helping those that can still be saved? Do you know what it's like to have one spit in your face? Do you know what it's like to have someone tell you they hope your family members die? Do you know what it's like to be punched in the face repeatedly while you're at work? Do you know what it's like to damage or lose your relationships because you work holidays, overtime, different shifts, and miss family events? Do you know what it's like to try and forget about what you've seen, smelled, tasted, felt, heard, and touched? Well, I do. I've experienced every single one of those things and more. I don't want medals and I don't want your sympathy. What I do want is for our citizens and our community leaders to recognize the men and women who I serve with and the things we've sacrificed to protect our communities. And maybe Give us a little credit for undertaking an incredibly complex and challenging job. Please don't judge us for the misconduct of a few rogue officers. Believe me when I say we don't want them in our profession either. They need to be held accountable as any criminals should be, but they are the exceptions. I ask you, get to know the men and women who make up your local law enforcement agency before condemning us based on the actions of a few.